Today we're going to paint our Grant Wood landscape with watercolor paint. Now the first thing we have to do before we paint is do anything that's left over with oil pastel. So last time what we did was we drew some curved lines for hills. We stacked up many hills on top of each other this way to create our landscape. Now we left a little bit of room up at the top so that we could create a sky. And some people in their sky chose to make details like a sun. Some people chose to create clouds. It's up to you what you put in your sky. Also on the hills, we have to make sure that they have a few details too. Now I really like to add the Grant Wood style trees. Grant Wood style trees are geometric shapes, like ovals and circles. And that's kind of interesting because really, in real life, trees aren't geometric shapes. They're not perfect. They're a lot more organic shapes than this. But we know that in art, it doesn't always have to be realistic. So that's why we're doing some oval shapes today to kind of try out Grant Wood's trees. And I'm just adding a little bit of color to one side of my tree. And the other side I'm going to fill in with paint later. I like to do the same thing with my hills. Some parts of my hills I fill in with oil pastel. I'm going to use kind of a zigzag line a little bit. And then some of the areas I leave white so that I can paint it. So you can decide what areas you want to fill in and what areas are going to be painted. I might add a few more hay bales here. Maybe a few more rows of crops. So that it really looks like a good farm landscape. Now when you're done with your oil pastel, it's time to do some watercolor paint. So we're going to set up our water and our watercolor paint. And we're going to be using a nice soft watercolor brush. So we have to be really gentle not to scrub these because they have very soft bristles that could get messed up very easily. So when we paint today, you can actually use any colors that you want because this picture doesn't have to be super duper realistic. So I think that I'm going to start with some orange. And I'm just going to put a puddle of water into that color that I want to use and then give it a very gentle tickle. Now once that paint is ready, I'm going to use it to gently fill in my hills. And I'm really making sure that my paintbrush isn't making any noise and that it stays nice and pointy. If my brush is making a loud scratching noise, that means that I am pushing too hard or that my brush is starting to get dried out. With watercolor, you need a lot of water, so you can notice in this big area, if I don't fill my brush up enough, it's not really going to paint very well. It has to be full of that painty water in order to work. And I have to go back and fill it up pretty often. That is just how watercolor works. So I'm just filling it very gently, and I might have to add more water to my puddle too, because we're using so much paint on our paper. If you want to mix your colors with watercolor, that's fine. You're just going to clean your brush before you get into a new color. Then you can add some clean water to a new puddle. Give it a little tickle. And blend it into a few areas. I'm going to add some red down here at the bottom, because I think red and orange look beautiful blended together. Now my road that I drew, I'm going to make that a different color because I want my road to stand out. If that was also orange or red, it wouldn't really stand out very well. So I'm going to pick a cool color, blue. Cool colors are always good at standing out from warm colors. And I'm just going to keep on going, painting all the important parts of my picture until it's all filled in. Now my painting is all finished. The only place that I left white were my fluffy white clouds, and my brush is still very pointy. You probably noticed how many times I had to fill up my puddles of paint so that my brush had enough water on it to paint my large paper. Always make sure that as you're painting today, your brush keeps a really good hair day.